You're listening to episode number 38 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is a Q&A episode, and I'm going to answer Lynn's question, and I'm going to actually give you the amended question and then read the entire question in just a bit. But her question is, how does karma play out in our lives? Now, again, that's the gist of her question. I will read the entire question after the introduction. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so Lynn's question was, I read the amended question because I can't put her entire question in a headline. So the headline that I gave it was, how does karma play out in our lives? But let me read you Lynn's entire question. And the question is this, and it's a little long, but it's great. And you know, what I want you to do is just take what I'm sharing with Lynn and apply it to your own life. Okay, so also Lynn was in my transformational coaching program, which we call TCP. And Lynn says, I remember you saying on one of our TCP calls that you wanted to have children, but you realized it wasn't your karma for this lifetime. I've always wanted a husband, yet for some reason at 55, I've never had a long-term relationship since college. I've never been engaged or even close to marriage. Honestly, I haven't been on a date in 13 years. How will I know maybe it's not in my karma this time around? Question mark. Will I get any signs aside from what's obvious right now? Question mark. Maybe it's time to throw in the towel? Question mark. Okay, Lynn says a whole lot here. And in this episode, I definitely, obviously, want to talk to you about karma. And I do want to be very clear that, you know what, when we start talking about things like karma, working with a shaman, there's a lot of things that I can share with you that I'm not so much going to share in this episode because I want to actually take it in a couple of different directions. But not only that, is when we start talking about karma, we're talking above my pay grade. I mean, we're talking above most people's pay grades, with the exceptions of maybe, shamans and sorcerers and babalawos and beings of that nature. But I'm going to answer in a way here. I want to take this answer in a couple of different directions. So just stay with me. Even though she's asking about a relationship, the gist is, really what's in the cards for me? Is it my karma to move to Thailand, or is it in my karma to have kids or start my own business or all these kind of things? And I'll give you some examples that I think that will resonate with you, and we'll just see how it goes. So let's dig in. First off, what is karma? And my definition has always been, for example, like ancient Sanskrit, karma is boomerang. Plain and simple, what you put out is what you get back. And I also want to point out, we'll dig into, there are multiple layers of karma depending upon where you're working from in terms of your own cosmology, your place on the planet. For example, which I've mentioned before, that science demonstrates you cannot die. You do not die because your electrons, neutrons, and protons, and Einstein's theory the law of the conservation of energy and the law of conservation of matter. There we go. And by the way, I'm on a time frame today, so I'm not backing up to edit. But, Einstein said you cannot destroy energy and matter. They just change form. And right now you're in matter, which means, you know what? And you're also energy. But you know what? When you stop being matter, then you just actually exist as pure energy, consciousness, spirit, soul. But when I say we're going to look at this from different places, so we can look at it from a soul place, we can look at it from a soul place of multiple lifetimes, or we can look at it, in the context of a single lifetime. So again, let's just take this apart. But I looked up the definition of karma, and the definition is this: the sum of a person's actions in this and previous states of existence, which means other lifetimes, viewed as deciding their fate in future existences. Now, again, I'm not going to go into it here. I will do another more in-depth episode on karma. But what a lot of people believe is that, okay, we go from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime and we evolve as beings. We evolve our consciousness. We evolve our personal power. But what I've been taught is that's true, but not entirely true in the way that people believe it. Most people think that they go from one lifetime to the next and they evolve, and they go to the next and they evolve, and they go to the next and they evolve, and etc. for eons and eons and eons as we're evolving. What I've been taught is it's not always sequential, is that you can actually be in one lifetime and then go to the next and, metaphorically speaking, take 3 steps back because you're actually working out some kind of karma with beings that are at that place in space and time, and then you can reincarnate again and move up a couple of steps and move back. It's not sequential as I've been taught, like everyone believes, step 1 evolve, step 2 evolve, step 3 evolve. Again, I've been taught that you can evolve, go back, evolve, go forward, evolve, go back and back and back, kind of like a board game, 3 steps up, 2 steps back. So I just want to share that. Okay, so again, we want to look at things twofold in our time together today because, like every podcast, I want to give you some very tangible takeaways, things that you can use to transform your life. Okay, so something I want to point out here, which I've alluded to, is that in ancient Sanskrit, the word karma means boomerang. As I've been, not my brother-in-law never told me that, but I read that somewhere many years ago, and it makes sense. What you put out is what you get back. Just like a boomerang, you throw it out and it comes right back to you. So, and I also had mentioned that karma runs through lifetimes. What's interesting is I got a message a couple of days ago. The reality is, let's just be candid here and let's just speak candidly, is what I've told you guys before is that you're never going to please everyone. So, I don't know where you are in your own personal evolution listening to this podcast, but basically somebody actually sent me an email a couple of days ago, and what do I want to say here? They basically were not understanding in my interpretation, the deeper messages that I was trying to convey. So I'm trying to actually cover and assist as many people as I possibly can in my explanations here. And I've also thought about, and I mean this very humbly to everyone listening, I've also thought about doing a 3rd podcast a week, calling it, Jim Uncensored, and just digging even much, much deeper into the realm of energy and cosmology. Let me put it that way. So that might be on the middle burner right now, but we might actually move that up to the front burner. Okay, so when I look at karma and lifetimes, literally when I look at people, I often ask myself, like Lynn here, and I'm going to direct myself to Lynn and take apart her question and go through it. But when I look at karma, many years ago, and I'm sure I mentioned this on a podcast somewhere, I was backpacking in Mexico in the 90s, and I grew up in Texas, and it was no big deal back then. We used to go to Mexico all the time, and especially, especially when we were in college, because you could get shots for a quarter, and I think beers for 50 cents back many years ago in the 80s. But I remember in the early 90s, I was backpacking in Mexico, and I saw this guy in a wheelchair, and he fell out of his wheelchair, and he started crawling in the streets. And my first thought was, and by the way, you might be thinking, well, why didn't you help him up? Well, he was 50 feet away and there were other people around him. And for some reason, had the inclination to watch for just a couple of seconds. And I said to myself, what is that guy's karma? Now, my brother-in-law conveyed a story to me. Well, let me go somewhere else here. And then when I look at Oprah, I mean, she's a billionaire. She's a global personality. And I've also said, just like that guy crawling in the street, I've also said about Oprah. I have said to myself, what is her karma? Because every single one of us, we are learning lessons and we're working on something or working out something with other people that we're traveling with in our soul families. So I'm always just watching people. And let me share something with you off topic here. I don't make a lot of notes for these. I basically just sit down, put on a mic, and I just go with it. And I know I might have said this before, but what released me from the fear of judgment from people was something very simple. And especially the fear of, comparing myself to other people. And when I read this, it was like, oh my gosh, like a two by four right between the eyes. And it was a very simple passage. And it said, never compare yourself to anyone because no two people have the same karma. Oh my gosh. Literally, when I read that, I'm like, that for me, that's true. And then I thought, why would I ever compare myself to anyone? Because that person who in the past I might compare myself to, they're working out their karma. Their karma is not mine. My karma is not theirs. So why in the world, and how could I even possibly think to compare? Because we're learning different lessons. Back to the guy in the street here very quickly. As I said, I don't really make a lot of notes. I just put on a mic and I go. But I remember my brother-in-law accounting, or recounting or sharing, let me put it that way, not accounting, but sharing a story with me when he was apprenticing with the shaman that he apprenticed with in Mexico. And he was a kid, he was probably 10 or 11, and he saw some other kids eating out of dumpsters. And what he said to his mentor was, he said, oh, something along the lines of, what a shame, how sad it is they have to eat out of dumpsters. And his mentor very sternly said to him, how arrogant of you. Those boys are learning lessons this lifetime that you will never have the opportunity to learn. So when I look at us, and including Lynn, with the question, when I look at all of us, we're all learning lessons. And I'm going to just use this phrase instead of African American. If you're black, guess what? You're learning karma. If you're gay, you're learning karma. If you're not those things, you're learning karma. Whatever you are, understand this, please, or at least consider it. Whatever you are, you're actually learning, or actually, I should say, working out your karma. And rather, I should say, you're learning by working out your karma. There, that's a better way to phrase that. Really good friend of mine, one time we were talking about all this, and he actually also apprenticed with my brother-in-law, the shaman, for about 15 years. And a phrase that he used quite often is, if you're not now, you will be. And that's very powerful. If you're not now, you will be. And I think that's, for me, a reason to do my best. And, I'm not perfect, obviously. But I think that's the reason that I know, and I'm still working on, that compassion is the number one thing that we can have. Because by being compassionate with others, we're growing ourselves, we're learning. But guess what? Whatever they are, whether we've been it before or not, if we have been, that's great. And if we haven't been, there's a good chance that we will be at some point on our evolutionary journey. So I look at the big picture, and I'll give you an example here. I I'm choosing my words here. I have learned, let me put it that way. I've come to understand and I've come to know that we are all born with a path. And what I mean by that, let's look at, for example, Mother Teresa. Now, Mother Teresa came, and in my observation, and actually, I have a friend of mine who was an advisor of hers for many years and knew her for a lot of years before she passed. And he himself is on the planet working out karma. He's a global leader, a global thought leader, and I've advised him for a lot of years. He's been a good friend. When he comes to Dallas, he stays in my home. And we've talked about Mother Teresa, personal things before, etc. But here's the thing, is Mother Teresa did not come to the planet to be a real estate millionaire. Consider that. She didn't come to, buy multifamily properties and become a real estate millionaire. She came to the planet to do what she did. Now, a distinction that I want to draw here is that what I call that is we're all living out our dharma. And the definition of dharma is the natural order for us living into a higher plan and path for our lives. So, for me, let me give you an example, and some of you, I think, can relate to this. Okay, these podcasts, for example, and my transformational coaching programs and everything on my path, whether it be that I'm a master hypnotist and have been for a lot of years, or an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner, or a coach for a lot of years, or apprenticing with a shaman for, 2.5 decades. For me, every bit of that is part of my karma and my dharma. because I'm on this path and it all plays out in a way that I can evolve and grow myself through living my Dharma. So by me living my Dharma, what I do, it's my Dharma to come here and to share these messages. Now, what I mean, and akin to Mother Teresa, let's say that, for example, Bill Gates walked up and said, you know what, Jim, I will give you $2 billion if you stop doing what you're doing, you stop the podcast, you stop your transformational programs, and you come into Microsoft and you can only work with people at Microsoft. And I'll write you a check for $2 billion. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, I would say no to that. I don't care what the money is. And the reason why is because if I did that, I would be, and this is my choice of words, okay? I would be violating my Dharma. I would be violating why I came to the planet. And see, I want to fulfill why I came to the planet. And the reason why I want to fulfill it is so that I can grow and I can evolve on my cosmic journey. And if I were to segue, so to speak, pull the car over on the side of the road and segue and take that $2 billion, and of course I'm making that up, but I'm using it for effect. And I do mean that because money flows in my life anyway, not in the billions, but it flows in the millions. So if I were to actually not, my learning and my knowing is that if I don't learn my lessons and I don't live my Dharma and I don't execute my Dharma, well then guess what? It's kind of like being in school and being held back. I have to go back and repeat the grade again. And why would I want to do that? Why would any of us want to do that? But yet we do. And as I understand, let me put it this way. We are all on a train, metaphorically speaking, we're all on a train going home. Some people are in the front of the train, some people are in the back of the train, but we're all headed home, which means our cosmic evolution. So for me, and I think some of you can relate to this, which I started alluding to earlier, what I do when I started talking about Bill Gates, I, like Mother Teresa, what she did is what she did. That's why she was here. Let me add there also is what we don't know is, we look at Mother Teresa, many people do, and they say, well, she did this and she helped the poor and the lepers and homeless and all this kind of stuff. But do we truly, truly understand the impact that she had on millions or perhaps billions of lives around the planet? Maybe somebody lives in a penthouse in New York City, but you know what? They follow her example. And I'm just using that as an example. So, you know what? She did what she was here to do. And the same thing with me, and I've tried to allude to it 2 times and I've gotten off track. But for you, do you know that there's something that you're here to do? So for me, I couldn't do anything other than what I do. And there's nothing at this point with the guidance that I have could pull me off this path. Let me add also about Mother Teresa and myself only as examples, and I am not comparing myself to Mother Teresa. I've got a long way to go. But what I want to point out is that she had free will. I have free will. So at any point, Mother Teresa could have said, you know what? I'm supported by the Catholic Church. I think I want to go hang out in the Vatican for a bit. They've got some nice art there, and I don't, probably an air-conditioned room and a better place to sleep. I'm going to go hang out at the Vatican. She had free will. She could have done that. I, just like you, have free will. If I wanted to leave this path, I could do it. Would I choose to do it? Absolutely not, for where I am right now in my understanding and my sense and my knowing about my path. But I want to point out is even though we have karma, we have dharma, we also have free will, and we can choose. Now, I do want to point out that Lynn had said that I had said, because I did say it, but I think I said it more colloquially, and I remember when I said, you know what, early on I wanted kids, I don't have kids now, and I did say, I recognize that it's not in my karma for this lifetime. I do want to point out that what I think was more colloquial than anything else, and you know what? I'm only 54 years old. We could choose to have kids. I could still choose to have kids. However, for me, at this point in the path that I'm on and the life that I have, and especially working with a shaman, which literally is extremely energy consuming, it's not something for me. Let me put it this way. It's not aligned with my current path. But as far as being my karma or not, I couldn't answer that. I'm just simply saying that it's a choice that I've made. Now, let's go back to Lynn. She said, I've always wanted a husband, yet for some reason at 55, I've never had a long-term relationship since college. So, always wanted a husband, yet for some reason. We go to that place a lot as human beings for some reason. Now, Lynn, I don't know your karma. I don't have that power, but let me take this apart as best that I can. And I'm going to give the rest of you some examples about how we really can't see other people's karma. Now, working with a shaman, actually, for all of us that work with him, he's always told us don't give each other advice, which I'll tell you guys why in just a moment. Um, he says don't give each other advice because you don't have the personal power to see each other's karma, which he does. And if you give someone advice, you can lead them in the wrong direction. So I'm not going to give any advice here either, but I want to give you an example of how giving advice can lead people in the wrong direction, even against their karma. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So, Lynn, in your question, I've always wanted a husband, yet for some reason at 55, I've never had a long-term relationship since college. Lynn, what's interesting is the way that you phrase this, because there's a difference between wanting a husband and being in a relationship. And I am not at all saying this applies to you, but many times I've noticed that people are more in love with the idea of being in a relationship than they are with the person they're in the relationship with. So, Lynn, have you considered the way that you phrase that is that you've wanted a husband, but then in the next part of the sentence, I've never had a long-term relationship since college. Now, Lynn, you know me, it could be semantics, but this came out of your brain, and I'm very curious about the way that you phrase that. So a question to ask yourself, in your mind, is there a difference between wanting a husband and wanting to be in a relationship? I also need more information here, Lynn, because what's your interpretation for not having a long-term relationship in 37 years? Now, Lynn doesn't mention that in the backstory that she gives me, but I'm very curious as to what her interpretations, meaning what does it mean to her that she has not been in a relationship for 37 years? What does she think? What does she think that it means? What does she think it means about her? And what does she think has caused that? Three very, very different beliefs. And then, Lynn, I have another question for you. Is if you really sat down with this, and which a lot of us don't do, and I've been there, we get really honest with ourselves. And we get out of the self-deception because we love to actually fool ourselves. I think, and I'm going to mangle this, but I think it was Anatole, and I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. It's France, but I think it might even be France, the way it's pronounced. But I think Anatole France said something along the lines of, we are like the greatest liars to ourselves. And in shamanism, there is a phrase that, and it's taken me a lot of years to understand it, but the phrase is that in the end, everything comes to be a lie anyway. Okay, so, and there's many layers to that. So let's go back to this. So, Lynn, I ask you, what are your beliefs about relationships? What do you think your beliefs are about relationships? And then the doozy is, what do you which you don't know, but let me think here. You don't entirely know because we don't know how this is playing out for you, which let me dig a little deeper here. What are your unconscious beliefs about relationships? Now, let me explain something there. Let me share something. Many years ago, when I worked at the Hypnosis Institute in New York City, this woman came in, and actually my boss, who was my hypnosis mentor, he worked with her, and I watched the session. I watched him work with her. And she said, you know what? I've just never been able to sustain a relationship. Okay, you may want to go back and listen to the episode on subconscious reprogramming, but what we learn before the age of 8, and especially in our formative years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, things that we don't really have conscious memory of. Even if I ask you, when's your first conscious memory, you're probably going to go back to about 4 or 5 years old. And if I ask you all the things you heard when you were 4 years old, you might be able to tell me 1 or 2, but you just don't have the memory. However, what's happened in those time frames is imprinted on your subconscious mind. So, this woman came in for hypnotherapy. I watched my boss work with her, and she said that she had never been able to maintain a stable relationship. Also, or have a long-term relationship. Also, Lynn, I want to point out is that people love to jump on the bandwagon saying, oh, yes, that's me, that applies to me, when really we're looking for reasons and it might not. So I'm only postulating, only sharing as an example. So in hypnotherapy, my boss did age regression, and what he discovered is that the source, the root cause, the root imprint was that when she was 5 years old, when she was in kindergarten, her mother and father were fighting. And by the way, you've heard me say before, maybe if you've listened to the episode on subconscious reprogramming, is that the analytical mind, the part of the mind listening now and thinking, doesn't really develop till about the age of 8 years old. So whatever's said to the unconscious mind goes right in as an imprint. And when she was in kindergarten, she remembered because she remembered school and everything. She was 5 years old. Her mother and father were fighting. And her mother looked at her and said, Susan, whatever you do, never get in a relationship with a man because you know what? They are just too much trouble. Wow. Consider that for a moment. That's the imprint that she picked up when she was 5 years old. And yet, when she was in her 40s, she couldn't understand why she could never sustain a long-term relationship with a man. Well, it was because of that imprint, which, when she was 5 years old, and she didn't even remember it. So we're segueing here a little bit, Lynn, but I think I'm covering a lot of bases for a lot of people. Lynn, also, you said you've not been on a date in 13 years. What are your beliefs and what are your interpretations about that? Have you had opportunities for dates? Have you put yourself out there? Lynn, I'm going to just postulate at this point. I don't know that it's karma. I can't speak to that. I don't have that kind of power. But if I had to guess, it's more along the lines that you've created an imprint somewhere in your life about relationships. So, what have you asked yourself about not dating in 13 years? What self-talk do you have about that? Is it a choice? I mean, did anybody tie you up and say, no, you can't date at all? You can't talk to anyone? Also, not addressing your question is what fears do you have wrapped around dating? You didn't mention, maybe you have none, maybe you have a lot. I don't know. Even if I ask you right now, if you had to go on a date tomorrow, would you be afraid to go on a date because you're out of practice, you don't know what you're going to say, you don't know what it's going to be like, you can't make small talk, you talk too much, you talk too, who knows, right? But I want you to look at that. Then you say, how will I know if it's not karma this time around? As I just said a couple of times, I'm not qualified to answer that. And let me give you an example here, which I said earlier that I would tell you guys. I still have friends from college, several friends from college, but one of my friends, it's been just a lifelong friend since college. Oh, geez, about 15 years ago, he called me and he said, Jim, can I talk to you? I'm like, sure, come on over. And he told me that at that time, his girlfriend had had an affair. And she literally was lying about the affair. I mean, it was a very contrived lie. I mean, she was literally traveling out of town to see a guy, and it was a very contrived, very intricate, flat out lie. And he says, "What do you think that I should do?" And then he goes, "I've talked to Mark and Rusty and Chris. These were other friends, and they all said that I should dump her. What do you think?" And this is exactly. I remember the day. I remember where we were, and I said, "You know what, Chris? I don't know what to tell you." And the reason I don't know what to tell you is because I don't know what your karma is. Literally, I don't know what you're learning and I don't know what you're working out. So if you're looking for me to confirm, because he was looking for me to confirm, I said, if you're looking for me to confirm what the other guys said, I'm not going to do it. What I am going to say is, I don't know what you should do. I think you should search your heart and I think you should sit with this and the answer is going to come to you. Well, he did stay with her, and now something like, I don't know, 16, 17, however many years later, they're happily married. I mean, come on, people make mistakes. However you want to define it, no one's perfect. Okay, so, you know, Lynn, I don't have the power to say what your karma is, and no one else does as well. One more thing here, as I say on every podcast, is reminder. September the 4th, I'm going to be doing a live transformational training. I haven't put out the details on it yet. I mean, we're a month and a half away, but mark your calendar for the afternoon or the evening. I'm not sure. It'll probably be the afternoon of September the 4th, 2019, when I'm going to be doing a live transformational training. So make sure that you mark your calendar now. Okay, couple of things here. Let's go big picture again. You know, as I said earlier, what I've come to know is that as we're living our karma, we're on the planet, we're working out karma as well. What I've been taught is we travel in soul families. So, for example, your mother this lifetime could have been your daughter last lifetime, or your father this time could have been your daughter last time, or etc. I mean, the list goes into infinity. And I remember back in the 90s when I was looking, back when we read the newspapers and we had newspapers in like 96 before I was ever using the internet. And I remember reading about Kenneth Starr and Bill Clinton. Man, those two guys went after each other, and especially Kenneth Starr went after Bill Clinton like it's nobody's business. And I literally thought to myself, I'm like, what karma are those two guys working out? I mean, Kenneth Starr is putting Bill Clinton through the ringer. And my thought was, well, I wonder what Bill Clinton did to Kenneth Starr in the last lifetime. And the same thing with George W. Bush and Saddam Hussein. I mean, those two guys also went at each other big time. I mean, Saddam Hussein wanted to assassinate George H.W. Bush, or so it was reported in the news, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then apparently, it seems on faulty intelligence that George W. Bush went into Iraq. And George even said one time, he says, well, I did it because he was going to kill my dad. Now, let's not get into politics. Who knows what, he said, they said, we said, whoever said. But I thought in that moment, I'm like, wow. I mean, George W. Bush isn't just going in, man, he's going to annihilate Saddam Hussein. And again, stay out of the political opinions. It's not about any of that. But my thought was this, is like, wow. What did Saddam Hussein do in the last lifetime to George Bush? And George Bush is taking vengeance on him by virtue of being the president of the United States and having the military at his support to do it this time. So I'm going to share a few more things here, and then we're going to wrap this up because I'm going to shoot a more, not shoot, gosh, that's old Freudian slip from all my years of shooting video. I'm going to record another episode on this, and I want to dig a little deeper for those that want to go a little deeper. Okay, so how can Lynn, let me put it this way. Lynn, I don't have the power to answer your question. Is it karma that you're single? I don't have that power. But evidenced by the fact that you said that you've always wanted it, my guess is that there is some unconscious imprint somewhere. So I would recommend finding a hypnotherapist. And I would really closely examine my beliefs about what I believe about, relationships at this point and what kind of emotions and thoughts and feelings that I hold about belief. Could it be karma? Very well. Am I qualified to answer that? Absolutely not. But I want to talk a little more about karma. Many years ago, I don't know, maybe 10, 12, maybe longer than that, I was in a private meeting. There's just three of us. And he's not on the planet anymore, so I don't mind mentioning his name. But I was in a private meeting in Waco, Texas with a billionaire, and his name was Bernard Rappaport. Now, Bernard Rappaport started some big life insurance company, made a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. Forbes magazine at one time, even when I met with him, I think, at that point, had named him one of the 40 most generous philanthropists in the United States because he heavily supported education and social justice. And it was just the three of us sitting there, which this man that I told you advised, Mother Teresa, his name is Akio Matsumura, who is a global thought leader. If you've ever heard of the Earth Summit in Rio in 1993, he's the founder of it. The Global Forum, bringing together 1,000 world leaders 6 times, he's the founder of that. And it was Akio, myself, and Mr. Rappaport. And Mr. Rappaport, making all these billions of dollars, he said something that was just really, really simple, I thought. And he said, you know what? He goes, the way that I live my life is I try to do good and I just try to do great things for all people and be the best person that I can. And I leave it at that. I thought that was really powerful. You know what? Leave the world a better place than what you found it. Do good by people. Be the best person that you can. And we're all fallible. I mean, we've all got stuff. We've all got baggage. We've all got things we're working on. And leave it at that. Okay, so I don't know if I mangled this episode or not, if I got the ball across the plate, if I've got a lot of you thinking. But a couple of takeaways that I want to share with you. And again, I've got something in mind that I want to do here. As I said, maybe a third podcast every week, which would be basically, if we do it, it's going to be called Jim Uncensored. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of my time with the shaman and some things that perhaps are more progressive than what I even share in the regular podcast. But what I wanted you to do in this episode is just start thinking about, because I mean, how can we measure, any of us, like karma from lifetime to lifetime? So how about we focus on right now? And how about we be the best possible people that we can be? So a couple of big takeaways for you are this. Number one is never compare yourself to anyone, because no two people have the same karma. When you come to know that, everything starts to shift for you. For me, that was the epiphany, the aha, that you know what? It's ridiculous to compare myself to anyone else, because no one else has my karma and I don't have theirs. And a transformational takeaway is this week. I was watching many years ago, I was watching Oprah talk to Maya Angelou. And Oprah actually, she just recounted what Maya Angelou said. And Maya Angelou said, what you do to others, which is karma, you're creating karma. What you do to others has already been done to you. Consider that. And then ask yourself, what do you do to others? And I'm gonna go somewhere here for a second. And I don't really think it applies to anyone that listens to the podcast. I mean, I've got some love letters from people, and I've got some hate mail from people also, and I've got some some nasty comments here and there. That's okay. It is, because I can't control what people do, and it's not about me. It's their interpretation anyway. But I look at people on YouTube. They go hate on people. They don't think the universe sees that. And if they're hating on people, guess what? They're going to get hated on back. So, and I'm not perfect at this, but the way that I live is that what I do to other people is already done to me. And if I want to gossip, guess what? People are gossiping about me. If I want to hate on people, guess what? People are going to hate on me. And you know what? I don't enjoy those things. They're not my favorite things. So why not actually just be the best, the best person that I can possibly be? Okay. So that wraps up this episode. Again, hopefully I didn't mangle it too much. I mean, this is kind of an exhaustive concept that, how the heck do you talk about karma through lifetimes and through the eons of time and make any sense of this? That's why I brought it back to ground level. Basically, what you put out is what you get back. The next episode is a Q&A episode, and obviously in this episode we had our mind up in the universe and the stars and everything else. Let's bring it back down to at least Earth level. And I got a question here, and the person says, when you have extremely large goals, should you start by focusing on smaller goals, or just keep faith that the larger are there and it will happen? I know exactly what I want, and I deserve it. I know it's going to happen. I just want it to happen now. I know I'm like every other human who wants instant gratification. Well, the question's going to be about where should we focus, but there's so many things that I can take apart in there that I see causing a lot of heartache for a lot of people. So Q&A, we're going to answer that question next week, and let me see whose question that was. That was actually, one second, that was Charity's question. So, okay, we dig into that next week, and like I say on every episode, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing. And despite the fact that I had mentioned something about really bad grammar, I'm not a grammar Nazi. If you've got questions, I promise I won't mention grammar unless I can't read it. But if you've got any questions, send them to support@jimfortin.com, and I will get to them as I can. Right now, I've got a full plate with questions. However, I'm here to serve you. Okay, make it a great day today, and I'll catch you over on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.